Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're having a great day today. I know I certainly am. Very happy today to be going through our second of three Lunch and Learn presentations on concepts that really matter when it comes to information security and keeping your organization secure from the latest threats. Today, we're going to be talking about administrator rights and malware. So let's go ahead and just jump right into this and get started. For those who don't already know me, hi, I'm Kevin Hayes. I'm actually the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer here at Merit. I've been here in the cybersecurity arena for, interestingly enough, about 20 years or so. Um, and in all this time, I've been absolutely having an amazing time and loving it because I'm really, really passionate about cybersecurity and IT, especially when it comes to how we do all this fun stuff in nonprofit. And with all of the work that we do at Merit with you all, with our members, with cybersecurity assessments, the Michigan Cyber Range, we're able to do some really, really great things. And part of that is making sure that, again, you're aware of the things that we see every single day that matter the most. So I like to think of this Lunch and Learn series really as just the cliff notes of all the interesting things and all the really important things that not only do we see on a regular basis, but that you need to make sure that you know of on a regular basis. So all this to say, for today, we are talking about admin rights, administrator level rights. And I will start today's presentation the exact same way that I'm going to conclude the presentation. So you know exactly what you are going to be in for. So to begin with, we're going to be talking about the fact that, hey, we are in this giant conundrum of having administrator level rights given to many of our employees, sometimes all of our employees, because of a lot of really interesting legacy. I don't even want to call them decisions or choices because we really didn't have a decision or choice at the time. But times have changed, and in many cases, we have not. So that kind of puts us into the predicament that we're in right now. And that predicament leads right into point number 2 here, which is that when it comes to malware, when it comes to ransomware, when it comes to any kind of attacking or attackers, administrator rights are the gold mine that can allow an attacker or a threat against you and your organization to go from a small problem that you can deal with in 5 or 10 minutes to a miserable problem that could potentially be costing you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you lose all of your hair and you are just in a really bad place because you are now the next story on the front of the newspaper, right? That's what administrator rights can do if you do not properly control them. But there are solutions. Of course, there are solutions. I'm not going to come here to you with problems and just say, well, good luck. No, 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 no. We can provide relief valve to those, call it both political and technical challenges that come along with taking away administrator rights. And we'll be talking about what those challenges kind of are and really what's underneath all of them. And then just on top of all of this, knowing that there are software solutions out there right now that can basically make all of this instantly go away. So even though you can do things yourself, many people have done this themselves. There are really great tools out there that you can use that literally stop this problem in its tracks. They're either cloud-based or on-premise solutions have you covered. These are problems that have been solved. Maybe we don't want to solve them, but they have been solved. So how did we get here? How did we get to a point where we have this concept of administrator rights that's basically uber god mode for computers that are given to so many people out there that now we have to try and claw back? Well, if we stop and we think on how we kind of got here, 20 years ago, the computers that we were giving out to all of our employees did not have this concept of an administrator. Well, actually, I take that back. They did have a concept of an administrator. It was called whomever was using the computer at that time. The concept of user-based security really didn't have a lot of good traction in the client-server computing model, primarily in use at the time. So going back to Windows 98 or Windows 95, Windows 3.11, though, I mean, these operating systems, they were honestly consumer-based products. They weren't meant for an enterprise. They weren't really meant to be managed from a central location or place with central tools. There were no really good or great management tools to take care of these, brand new big beige computing workstations with their giant 15-inch CRT monitors that we plaster on everyone's desk, right? When client server computing came out and all of a sudden all of our employees got computers on their desks, which was a thing, when all of a sudden all of our employees actually got computers, the default state at that time was, well, here's a computer and yeah, we're going to go and run a Microsoft Office 3.5-inch floppy or CD around and install software. And you have problems, good luck, call us and we'll come and we'll fix something for you. But of course, as we all know, in many cases, that level of support really didn't match the expectations of our employees. So we had employees that would go and would just by default, hey, you want to install a plugin for Microsoft Office or an elf bowling game that you found on the internet or Bonsai Buddy or anything else? Sure, why not? It's my computer, right? And ultimately, that's the crux of the thing: is employees and staff members got to thinking that this asset in front of them, this computing asset, was theirs and not under the company's ownership. And I don't want to take away the fact that people should feel an ownership over the things that we give them. But when it comes to a ransomware attack, do you think it's going to matter that it was quote unquote their computer? Are they going to take ownership when their computer goes and locks out all of your data? No, magically it's going to become your problem again, right? So we have this conundrum that culturally employees and staff think that they deserve to have administrator level rights on their computer so that they can continue to do things like install their own software, change their own settings, because that is how it's always been done. Trademark, right? Like, we love hearing that because it's always been done. Because of course, something that we've been doing for 20 years, especially in technology, is something that we should continue to do. And of course, that's me being sarcastic. Ultimately, what can administrators do if you're thinking to yourself, well, Kevin, like how bad can it be? What exactly can an administrator do? Well, a whole lot. Whether it is disabling antivirus or anti-malware, well, administrators can do that because they have control over their operating system. They can turn off reporting on what's going on, logging, event viewing. We also like to make sure that people have the Windows firewall turned on in their desktop and server computing environments. It's one of the recommendations that we very frequently have to say and do, but hey, you can turn that off or you can add new firewall rules if you're an administrator. We know that you can change DNS settings, your DNS servers, as well as default suffixes, because that's a system setting, and that's something that malware can use in order to try and get around particular security controls. Administrators can actually go and create new processes, create new system services, things that launch on boot, things that restart on boot. And ultimately, all this kind of comes down to the fact that administrators can install unauthorized software, unapproved software, whether it is a big piece of software or a little piece of software, and ultimately have full and complete access to all the files and folders on the hard drive, not just the ones in their local user profile. So when you think of having full access to, the Windows directory with all the system files and libraries and startup items, these are things administrators can do. And all of these things right here on this page are extraordinarily powerful and are really, really risky if these end up going into the wrong hands. Because They want to get into the wrong hands. So I kind of already mentioned administrator level rights, the rights to, let me go back here, do all of these things right here. To be able to do all of these things, as I kind of talk through them, these are things that malware and ransomware want to do. They want to do all of these things. So if you have your staff members logged into their computers, and by default, they have these abilities, it's like giving, you know, like the keys to my car to my 8-year-old son. Like it's probably not gonna work out well in the end, even though he's really, really well intended, right? Like he doesn't want to crash the car, but he's 8 and his poor little legs can't quite hit the pedals and everything. It's not a good idea at all. Because I can tell you, as someone who has done penetration testing, as someone who has simulated doing what hackers do, all that I really want to do is, once I get that initial toehold or foothold at your organization, which truthfully can be really, really easy. It's as simple as having somebody go and actually click on a link in a phishing message or download something that I want them to download. If you have even 100 employees plus, and my success rate is like 1%, I'm going to be able to get in. I am going to be able to have a tiny, tiny little toehold in your environment. But now my next step from there is to take that toehold and make it so I can go anywhere. And that is what admin rights do. This is the goal of attackers. Elevation is kind of the more technical term where you're elevating your rights from a regular user or employee up to an administrator that can do all of these things right here. Because now the moment that I can do all of these things, I don't want to say it's game over for you because it's going to take a little bit extra work, but this will allow me to eventually give it enough time, make it so that it's game over for you. This diagram is actually from the New Zealand Computer Emergency Response Team, or their CERT, and I think again is a really, really great way to visualize when ransomware happens. What exactly is it doing? It's not magic. I can definitely tell you that. But no matter if the attacker starts, if we go and look here along the left side of the image, when they're either starting through phishing, or they're guessing passwords and then they get valid credentials, or they exploit a vulnerability on an internet exposed service, or an email is opened up that has malware on it. It then all comes, no matter the vector, as soon as that malware starts to run, we're going to start with what's called command and control, in which now the attackers have running malware, running ransomware in your environment, and it needs to move around. It needs to, if we want to use a cancer example, go from just a couple of cells to actually like taking over and becoming a giant, incredible disease. And then this is where the two-for combination of privilege escalation and lateral movement come into play. And privilege escalation is using administrator rights, administrator privileges to find new servers, to attack new things, and enable yourself to move around and find all of the other computers on your network, all the other assets, all the other data, all the other files, so that the attack can actually take place. And I can tell you for a fact, if you do not have administrator privileges, this becomes extraordinarily difficult because you can't move. In order to move, you need administrator level rights to have that good lateral movement. So your goal right now in 2021, we are no longer in 1999. We are indeed in the new millennium. It is not worth the risk at all of having unchecked or unapproved administrator rights at your organization. Sorry, folks. I mean, you all kind of know it in the back of your head. Times have changed. Yes, we're still, in many cases, client server computing, even when we're up and using cloud services for a majority of our computing work, right? But those desktops, those laptops that we have deployed to our employees can no longer be fully in their control. Times have changed. Ransomware and malware exist today a lot differently than they did even 5 or 10 years ago. Times have changed. We must change too. And I'm not saying here that we are completely eliminating everything. That is unreasonable. There will always be some remaining access. You will always have some people that for legitimate business purposes do need administrator level rights. But what we can do is minimize it and reduce that risk to something that is a lot more manageable and directly within our risk appetite. And if we take a step back, if we think, okay, over the course of the last 20 years, why did people have an administrator level rights? 95% of the time, people say, well, I need to be able to install my own programs. I need to be able to go to Staples and buy something, or if I find a download of something on the internet I really, really like, or there's a new version of MATLAB or R or anything like that, like I, and there's the key word, is I need to be able to install that by myself. And again, I like to be a very empathetic person. I can see where they're coming from because you used to have to be able to do that. But if your staff install their own software, we have two issues. Number one, first of all, if you go back to my favorite cybersecurity framework, the CIS cybersecurity controls, literally control number two is, do you have an inventory of your supported software? Software has vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities can be exploited. You need to know, and you need to be willing to support the software that exists in your entire environment. You do not want to, and I have in here quotes, support unknown software. And I mean, truthfully, especially like your help desk, I'm sure they'd absolutely love to not want to have to like do Google support, like Googling support for whatever wacky programs and wacky software your employees just find and just decide all on their own are going to help them with their day and help do their business processes. And there are a bunch of softwares and management platforms that can allow users to still safely self-service install their own software. One of them is using SECM, or it's been rebranded as ECM, Endpoint Configuration Manager, their software center. So maybe you don't necessarily want to install every known program under the sun on all of your endpoints, but to say, hey, you know what? Like, we have a validated shop. We have this curated, call it like an Apple Store-ish kind of a situation where individuals can go and say, well, this is software that's been already approved and vetted, and it stays updated. This is the kind of solution that you want. So now you don't have an employee going and buying something out at a store or going to some janky website and clicking on download and trying to install on their computer. You have a trusted repository that you just tell people, yeah, open up Software Center, search for what you want, click a button. You can, at that point, they can think they're installing their own software, but truthfully, they are installing software that you approve of using your own methods. Ultimately, and this ends up being looked over sometimes, you need to know your different business functions that your employees need to do and the software that is required for them to do their jobs. And it sometimes can be a chicken and egg problem where your staff don't exactly know what software is out there to help them. So they may be doing things really efficiently and just not knowing about it. And as IT professionals, you may think, well, it's not my job to figure out how finance should be doing their job. And it's like, okay, but at some point we need to sit down together and you tell me what you do. And maybe it has some, get some creative juices flowing in my head. Maybe I realize instead of using software X, maybe software Y, or just changing your process might be a better idea. But ultimately, self-service installation options will help solve 90 to 95% of the issues with removing administrator rights. People love software. They want to install their own software, but by providing self-service, we can still manage that and be able to take ownership of what is on our computers without introducing unnecessary risk. Now, even when we go and potentially start allowing people to run their own software by self-service options, we need to understand that there are really two big kinds of administrators that we're trying to solve problems for here. One, I'll call it domain configured admins. These are accounts in Active Directory, or typically, a shared authentication scheme, where people can log in interactively on other people's computers, and those Active Directory enabled accounts can be used to administer local computers. Just alongside this, though, are what I can consider locally configured administrators. Now, these are not Active Directory accounts, but these are individual, separate, local accounts. And I typically call this like the local, what's known as SID 500, because the special unique identifier has the number 500 in it on each individual workstation. And although they're not connected to each other, the administrator account, the locally configured administrator account on computer 1 is technically a different account than on computer 2 or computer 3 or computer 4. There's still a problem here if that password is reused, because even though the account is different, if the password is the same, it really doesn't matter. So these two things will require two different approaches on how we're going to address them. And again, this is right here, just a reminder when it comes to privilege escalation. Think back a couple of minutes to that slide showcasing how attacks happen. Administrator rights can turn, I'll call it like an annoying computer hack in which you're like, oh boy, I can just, re-image this one computer, just blow out their user account and start over, a 10-minute issue into a 10-hour or a 10-day or a 10-week issue. Attackers want to find those elevated rights, whether they're for your own employees, IT employees, regular employees that have been granted administrator rights, or even for that local computer account. These are the things we need to find and fix. Now, when it comes to domain level accounts, probably the most critical ones are going to be your own employees, your own staff. I can tell you, as someone, as a penetration tester, someone who's done that kind of work, trying to find your IT team and your IT team's accounts is pretty much close to the crown jewels of what you want to find. Because ultimately, if attackers are able to find your IT team that has admin rights and they can run malware on your IT department's computers, it really is game over at that point. Even much more so than finding either like the president or the CFO, their accounts. Because if you think about it, well, with IT, you can make new presidents, you can make new CFOs. IT has the keys to the kingdom. So having layers with your IT team is going to be critical, because you cannot take admin rights away from your IT team. You can't take the master building keys away from the janitor. That's what they do, right? But what we can do is say, well, when you're just walking around and just doing your daily work, guess what? You're not going to have that master key ring on you at all times. You're going to have layers of accounts. And this is something that you can do right now. It's free. It'll take you 10, 15 minutes to set up and do, and make the whole world of a difference. My name is Kevin Hayes. My computer right now, I am running interactively as a normal domain account. I can do nothing on my local computer. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer. I have the ability to do a lot of important things, but guess what? When I'm browsing my email or going on websites or doing anything on a day-to-day basis, 99% of my job, complete unelevated account. I can do nothing with my regular account. I can't even install software on my computer. But that's where my next account is going to come in. This is still a domain attached account, A_KR Hayes. This is my workstation administration account. It's a little late today because Zoom had to update itself because it didn't do it properly. And I needed to do a couple of other IT admin level things. This required a completely different account, different password. It's actually even hooked in with my YubiKey, so I have two-factor authentication there. It is separate. So in the unlikely, but we still need to think about it, event that my computer is hacked or compromised, hacking tools cannot take out administrative level hashes or passwords from memory in my computer. And that exact same concept will work when I'm administering a server. I have an S account and a domain administration account, a DA account. I cannot log in interactively with anything other than KR Hayes at all. And that's the beautiful thing about this is we can protect IT. We can make it so that we can deny access to a computer either locally or over the network, depending on which account it is. You can create group policy within Active Directory that makes sure that these different tiers of accounts are only used in the methods that they should be. No one should ever log in interactively using my DA account, DA KR Hayes. Nope, never. Server account, nope, I can remote desktop in, but that's it. And my admin level, A KR Hayes, nope, never. Never interactive and only for particular job duties. And you can do that within group policy. You can do that within user management. So do that. It's free, it's available to you, and it is a security practice that is asked for whenever we, honestly, almost any cybersecurity framework out there. Now, I did mention there's two ways that we need to really look at admin. One are the domain level accounts, but the other is that local account. And for many of you, when you go and you deploy a brand new computer, usually that build process has it set a admin account. But if that admin, that local administrator, that SID 500 level account, if that password is the exact same on all of your workstations, guess what'll happen if an attacker figures out what that is? They can then move laterally back and forth to wherever they like, including up to your IT department's computers, because they have a password that works. We need to get rid of that pesky local administrator backdoor. There are many tools that you can use, including free tools. The one that we typically recommend that we've seen used in many places, including here at Merit, is LAPS, the Local Administrator Password Solution. What this does is this changes Active Directory so that then there is an encrypted attribute in Active Directory for each computer object. And LAPS will go and make a unique local password for all of your domain joined computers and cycle them, periodic cycling on a regular basis. It's literally the best of both worlds. And did I mention that it's free? Because it is. And by enabling this now in the, I won't even say unlikely, because it's not that unlikely, event that an attacker gets in to any of the computers in your organization, that if they do manage to have an offline crack attack against the local password database and they get that local administrator password, it is useless, absolutely useless to go anywhere else. And if the thought of doing this is like, oh, this is like a lot of work, right? And it potentially can be. Usually more software is more problems. In this case, more software can give you less problems because this is a problem that has been solved many times in the past. And two great examples, I'm not promoting any one particular piece of software here, but both Tycotic and CyberArk are really great privileged access manager or PAM solutions that can either help you go through the process of taking away administrator rights or do really cool things. Like you can write policies based on publishers of software or particular EXEs or hashes, where you can say, hey, for this piece of software, I'll let you automatically run as an administrator, or this piece of software will ask to make sure that you're fine, or another one will actually say, ooh, I'm going to send a notice to the IT person. And as soon as they click yes, you can run this. Giving you a whole bunch of flexibility and options in how you can deal with and ultimately take away administrator rights. So I'll say a relatively simple concept, but so incredibly powerful when it comes to organizations that have been crippled by ransomware and malware. One of the most common themes together is that unchecked administrator rights caused it to happen. Nobody loves giving up power. Who does? Who would love the ability to do whatever they want on anything and then be told a few years later, you know what? You're not going to do that anymore. Nobody loves doing that. And that is what gives us the political backlash and hesitation to do what is right. Because malware doesn't care about what's right or wrong. Malware will not care about the fact that your president will have their feelings hurt if you take away administrator rights. All malware and ransomware cares about is getting its sweet, sweet money or making your life miserable. It will find administrator rights and do bad things to you and your organization. But whether you are utilizing self-service software delivery, whether you're utilizing a privileged access management solution, whether you're utilizing something like LAPS to make sure that there are unique passwords in all of your individual workstations, it is really important to provide those relief valves so that your employees feel that they're doing the right thing, they're still performing their jobs, and you are minimizing that risk. You are taking that ability for malware and ransomware to do bad things away from it, and you will be able to sleep a lot better at night. I really appreciate, I think we got about 1 or so minute left here. Let me go and pop open just the chat here if you have any questions. Let's see here. And again, I really appreciate the, I don't see any immediate questions here. If you do have some, either put them in chat or you can unmute yourself as well this time. I'd be more than happy to stick around for a few minutes and answer any questions. But again, administrator rights cause malware to do all the bad things. Let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Get rid of one, you get rid of the other. See a good question here. Paul Schwartz is asking if there are issues with remote computers conducting lapse cycling. Typically, lapse is smart enough to know to only check in when connected to the domain. So if you do have a remote computer, it will only really do that when it's connected to your VPN and able to actually make that cycling. It just simply waits for a connection before it makes that change. It's not like a password will all of a sudden become invalid and you will not be able to get back into that workstation. So it actually does a relatively good job with keeping things up to date. So even if you do have periodic password cycling, and you can change the interval, whether you want to be really aggressive and have it be 30 or 60 days, or just be like, hey, it's a unique password. I'm fine if it only cycles once a year. The system is smart enough to only securely update itself when it ends up being connected back to your network. So whatever is currently in Active Directory on that secure attribute that you can either pull up being a domain admin or utilizing the free lapse utility, whatever that password shows will be the one that you can use to get in. Excellent question. All right, and again, I'll be here for a few more minutes if you got in late and had any additional questions. I really appreciate you taking the first half of what might be your lunch hour today to learn a little bit more about security and really what matters and what we have seen matter in our assessments for our organizations, because ultimately we do want to make sure that you're not hacked and that you stay secure. Hope that everyone has a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.